Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Now that David Paterson has ended his campaign for governor, our next guest is the only declared candidate running, but he is still considered a long shot as the political world waits to hear from State Attorney General Andrew Cuomo. Joining us to discuss his campaign, the impending resignation of the head of the state police, and much more is Republican candidate for governor Rick Lazio. Thank you for coming back to the program.
It's very great to be on again.
So let's start off talking about Harry Corbett. It was announced today that he is going to resign. Is this a good step by Governor Paterson in trying to clear the air in this investigation?
Well, I think more people need to come forward, including Governor Paterson, basically everybody involved in this incident, to explain exactly what their role is, what they said, and when they said it. It's the beginning of what I hope will be a thorough investigation, and it needs to be done really by a nonpartisan investigator. I'm not sure the Attorney General is the right person to be doing that. I really do think a special prosecutor would be a more appropriate party to be doing it. But having said that, anybody involved in this, if these allegations are proven to be correct, needs to step down from state government.
So Andrew Cuomo should recuse himself from this investigation, bring in someone else to conduct it?
I just hardly think the public is going to trust somebody who's got political ambitions, who's told all his big donors he wants to run for governor, who may or may not have been involved in pushing a lot of these stories around the New York Times and other news outlets that eventually undermine David Paterson. I think it would be far healthier for the state for somebody who had no interest, no political interest, no agenda to conduct the investigation. You know, Albany has become a political swamp, an ethical swamp filled with corruption, scandal, and resignation. We have had Alan Hevesy, Elliot Spitzer, and now David Paterson. And New Yorkers have lost faith that this government is a government that focuses on their real needs. And I agree with the Lieutenant Governor, Dick Ravitch, who said, you know, the shame of all that's going on right now is that too few are focusing on the real issues that affect the public. The fact that the state is effectively broke, it's run out of money, that New Yorkers and jobs are leaving the state in droves, and that we're losing our sense of future.
So you, and I understand today, you also announced, put out a press release saying that Governor Paterson should resign. Now, you were defending him over the last couple of weeks. Why not wait until the investigation wraps up?
Well, I do continue to say, if proven. I think, you know, right now the man deserves to have these points proven. I also think that everybody involved in this, they know what their roles were. They know what they did. I mean, they don't need a subpoena or a grand jury investigation to come forward and tell the public what their role was in this.
And politically, I mean, over the last couple of weeks, you had been defending David Paterson, saying he was the victim of the media. I guess now looking at the possibility of, the likely possibility that you'll face Andrew Cuomo, I mean, politically, are you disappointed because you would have had a much weaker opponent in David Paterson?
No, I think it was inevitable, frankly, that David Paterson was not going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party, although it's up to the Democrats to decide that. I think it matters a whole lot less who the candidate is. What really matters is that people in New York, like in New Jersey and in Massachusetts, have had enough. They feel like their government in Albany is arrogant and out of touch. They want to get their government back. They want to shake them up. They don't think that somebody from Albany, they don't think that one more Democrat, after having Democrats control both houses of Congress, control the presidency, control both chambers of the state legislature, control every single statewide official, that a single new Democrat's going to fix this problem. They need somebody from outside of Albany, they say. They want somebody who doesn't have a political agenda, but merely wants to turn this state around, to get busy, to fix this economy, start to lower our taxes, create more jobs, and balance our budget.
So then why is Andrew Cuomo so popular? Why is he beating you by such large margins in these polls?
Well, you know, if you looked at the polls, you know, back in the early days against Chris Christie, John Corzine was leading. If you looked in Massachusetts, Martha Coakley, if you paid attention to what the polls said in the beginning, Martha Coakley would have been the eventual candidate. You know, I think it's a complete misread to look at polls 9 months out. Even in the suburbs of New York City in this past election in Westchester and Nassau County, longtime Democrats who were seen as part of the problem, entrenched interests, special interests driving the agenda, were thrown out of office. And even though they outspent badly their opponent, I think what the people of New York are desperate for is somebody who will come in and clean Albany up, who will be for sweeping and fundamental reform, who will be for lower taxes, and I've been for a property tax cap, who's for strategic decreases in taxes and the burden on small businesses so we can get back into the job of creating more jobs throughout the state. And Andrew Cuomo has not answered one single question about where he is on any of these issues. How would Andrew Cuomo close this budget gap? How would he go about lowering taxes? Would he go about lowering taxes? Would he balance the budget by raising taxes on small businesses and on the average working New Yorker? How does he feel about the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the so-called mastermind of 9/11, and whether that trial should take place downtown in New York? He's got to answer these questions just like I'm answering these questions.
But what if you were in his position politically, a popular attorney general, wouldn't you be employing the same type of strategy?
I think, listen, if he's got enough time to go out and raise $10 or $15 million and go parade around with a lot of rich, wealthy people and tell them what he feels, I think he owes the same responsibility to the average New Yorker who's not rich and powerful. I mean, I think the people of New York are going to demand, and they should demand, to know where the candidates are on the issues. They shouldn't have to find out after the election.
But isn't there time during the summer? He obviously is going to announce before the state convention in May.
But he's telling everybody he's a candidate. He's telling all his big donors he's a candidate. Why can't he tell the rest of the public that he's a candidate? And I think it's very important, honestly, that the media rises up and steps up, doesn't give a pass to Andrew Cuomo the way they gave a pass to Eliot Spitzer, didn't push things. They looked at the poll numbers early on. They saw there was a sense of inevitability, and look at what we ended up with.
But would that
a disgraced governor, a governor who stepped down, and David Paterson who took his spot, and now we have yet another scandal.
But would that have been discovered, the prostitution scandal, would that have been discovered during the campaign?
You would have hoped if the media was doing its business, it would have its job, it would have been asking some of those questions. I'm just saying, on the issues right now, on the issues like taxes, like our budget, like health care, education, jobs, New Yorkers are looking desperately for somebody who will lead the way to create more jobs. We've lost more jobs than all but 2 other states. 900,000 New Yorkers are out of work. And Andrew Cuomo is ducking and weaving and bobbing and trying to avoid in every way coming up with a suggestion as to how he's going to close this budget deficit and create jobs. I'm giving people ideas on how to do that. I've said I'm for lowering taxes on average New Yorkers, their property taxes. I'm for lowering property taxes for small business people. I've explained different ways in which I think we can balance the budget. Where is Andrew Cuomo on these things? All I know is that he seems like he's ducked every time people have asked him.
Well, let's take a look at his current job as Attorney General. How would you assess how he's been as Attorney General?
I think it's a mixed record, honestly. I think if you look at his record in cleaning up Albany, you'd have to say he's not really done the job that people need. You look at the scandals that we've had during the time he's been in office, and you've got to say, where was the Attorney General on this? And as I said before, it seems to me that the Attorney General, as the chief law officer for New York, should have some opinion on whether or not we should have a trial in downtown New York for the mastermind of the greatest terrorist attack in the history of America, and to afford all the rights and privileges of an American citizen to a terrorist. But where's Andrew Cuomo? Nowhere to be found. I'm against that. You know where I am. The question is, where's Andrew Cuomo?
How would you compare Andrew Cuomo to the last Republican Attorney General, Dennis Vacco? I think
Dennis Vacco did a very good job, was a very competent Attorney General.
Was he a better Attorney General than Andrew?
Yes,
he was a better Attorney General.
I think he was a much less political Attorney General. I think he was less of a grandstander. I think he stuck to his knitting. I think he was much more of a lawyer's lawyer.
But wasn't he accused a number of times of politicizing the office, Dennis Vacco?
I mean, he may have been accused by this, but I don't know by whom. I'll say this. If you look at the way Andrew Cuomo has conducted his job, he conducts it by press release and press conference.
Well, what do you think? You worked for J.P. Morgan. What do you think of how Andrew Cuomo has taken on Wall Street?
I think that, honestly, you can criticize people, and I'm not going to be an apologist for Wall Street, because I think there are some things that were done that were bad things that were done. I think people should be held accountable. I think 2 of the businesses, the firms that overreached the most, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, got the capitalist death penalty. But 95% of the people that work in the financial sector, 99% of the people, are good people. They work really hard. They're your neighbors. They pay their bills. We don't want to push them out of work. We don't want to destroy the financial sector because they pay the bills for our police and firemen. And maybe Andrew Cuomo wants to have all these folks pay their taxes in Hong Kong next year. I don't. I want to make sure that we have a strong financial sector. I want to make sure we have a strong manufacturing base. I want to make sure we have a strong information technology sector. I want this state to be great again. I want it to have a sense of pride and a future where we're building, where we have a high growth economy, and we're failing that job right now.
And it's my understanding you received a $1.3 million bonus from J.P. Morgan, which received bailout money. Do you see this then? Is this going to be the target of an ad? Is Andrew Cuomo going to put out an ad connecting you to these big bad Wall Street banks?
Yeah. Who can know what Andrew Cuomo is going to do to try and dirty me up? All I can say is I've run my life through the highest standards. I have had everything I've done, whether my years as a prosecutor, as a member of Congress, as a local legislator, my last 10 years in business, I am completely comfortable with the fact that I have conducted my life to the highest standards. And I will say, I'm proud of my work in the private sector. I think it's one of the things that gives me the ability, the experience, the skills to turn this state around. I think, being criticized for having a record of success in the private sector, to me, sends all the wrong signals. I think people want to have someone who's had a successful public sector career, but not in Albany, somebody who's been in the private sector and learned those skills, and somebody that's an outsider and who is completely focused on turning this state around. Not on the next political job, not on running for president, which is, I think, exactly what Andrew Cuomo would do if he got elected. My goal here
is a stepping stone to run for president.
I think he's the kind of being so blindly ambitious that it's just another stepping stone. To me, I've lived in this state my whole life. I know how dire our fiscal situation is. We're looking at a $50 billion 3-year deficit. That is the biggest fiscal crisis that I think there's a significant possibility that we won't have a budget this year. I think there's a significant possibility that we will default on cash payments. We need to have a governor that doesn't focus on the politics and on their own career. We need to have a governor who will make the tough decisions, who will take on some very entrenched special interests, which, by the way, have completely financed Andrew Cuomo's campaign. I hope the media asks about that a little bit, too. I'll be the one taking them on. I'll be the one standing up for the average working New Yorker. I'll be the one creating the jobs and balancing the budget. And I'll be the one turning this state around.
All right, Rick Lazio, we are out of time. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
All right, it's time for a break. I will be back with the preview.